There was a time when a small club from the coast of Portugal fought against giants. A time when Figueira da Foz wasn't just a beach destination, but home to a team that made even the biggest clubs sweat. If you grew up watching Portuguese football in the 2000s, you remember the green and white stripes. You remember Naval 1º de Maio. But then they vanished. Gone from the top divisions, gone from our imagination. So, what really happened to Naval, and why does it still hold a place in our memories? Well, I'm gonna be honest, I've thought many times whether I should make this video or not, because I got this gut feeling that I'm the only one making a big deal out of their first year run, and nobody else even remembers their short stint. But you gotta gamble sometimes, so today I'll do my best to explain what led to their demise, but also how they rose to the top, and why do I still think about them like you think about your ex. But first, and as usual, let me give you some context. Naval 1º de Maio was one of the oldest sporting associations in the country, having been founded on the 1st of May 1893. The club's founding date and its inclusion in the name are no coincidence. From the very beginning, Naval portrayed itself as a club with predominantly working class roots, which is why it chose International Workers' Day as its foundation date. Moreover, as the name suggests, Naval initially focused on maritime activities, particularly rowing. However, as the years passed, the club expanded into other sports, such as Greco-Roman wrestling, gymnastics, basketball, and of course, football. But Naval was not the typical club solely focused on developing athletes and achieving results. No, this club always prioritized its impact on the community, organizing dances, parties, and theater performances for all of its members. Focusing more on football, Naval is not a historic club lost in time, nor one that achieved great feats in past decades as other teams we've recently discussed here on Throne FC. In reality, despite being part of the Portuguese football pyramid since the 1930s, Naval always floated between the 2nd and 3rd divisions. There isn't really a dream team of Naval or a standout star player from that era to highlight, and even if there were, finding information would be difficult as the club's original headquarters fell victim to a devastating fire in 1997. One that erased much of Naval's history and even that of sports in the Figueira da Foz region. Now, that doesn't mean the club doesn't have any history, otherwise I wouldn't be wasting your time. With Ulisses Moraes at the helm, Naval had 3 solid campaigns in the 3rd division, narrowly missing out on promotion. Ironically, it was in the season following the fire that Naval achieved a historic promotion to the newly restructured 2nd tier, the Liga de Honra. After 2 seasons of struggle where Naval barely managed to secure survival, they finally found some stability, largely thanks to the financial backing of their president, Aprígio Santos. This real estate entrepreneur took over the club when it was in the 4th tier in the early 90s and gradually built it up season after season. During Naval's time in the 2nd division, Aprígio's investment helped the club attract players who would go on to have successful careers in Portuguese football, such as Vender, Auri, Rui Duarte, Fajardo, and even international names like Nabil Barra. Over time, the battles to avoid relegation turned into battles for promotion. In their only opportunity to make a mainstream statement, in the Taça de Portugal, Naval put on a show, knocking out teams like Vitória de Guimarães, Braga, and Sporting, even reaching the semi-finals on one occasion. Everything seemed to be pointing towards Naval reaching the pinnacle of its underdog story, and that climax came in 2005. Naval was in perfect harmony with the region. The club had never seen such strong support, nor had it ever assembled a squad as talented as the one in 2004-05. And with that, the Navalistas achieved the greatest feat in their entire history. After 112 years of existence, Naval was in the top flight. Staying up was never going to be easy given the gap in quality between Naval's squad and the average team in the Liga Betanduin. So it was no surprise that the Navalistas went into the final match day fighting for survival. Fortunately, their opponent was Penafiel, probably the weakest team I've ever seen in the Primeira Liga, but even then, they only managed to secure the winning goal 10 minutes from the final whistle, courtesy of Leo Guerra. For the next 3 seasons, Naval was there, I guess. From 2006 to 2009, they remained stable, had decent cup runs, pulled off several draws against the big teams, and even defeated Porto in the season they became 4-time consecutive champions. However, 2009-10 was Naval's true peak. That season, Naval recruited a bunch of players from the lower divisions of French football, and combined with an already solid core, they achieved their best ever league finish. That squad featured names like Pezé, Diego Ângelo, Nicolas Godmes, Bolívia, Marinho, Michel Simplício, and Queiroz. They weren't exactly legends, but for the level they were competing at, they were solid, reliable players. And in the end, Naval's best ever finish, which I somehow haven't mentioned yet, was 8th place. Yeah, not exactly glamorous, but that 8th place finish did help increase the value of their squad. The problem was that there was zero long-term planning for how to manage player sales. It's as if a Prigio Sancho had invested in Naval back in 1992 when they were at rock bottom, saw that 8th place in 2010 as a peak, and the moment he felt comfortable stepping back and selling. For all the passion and suffering that fans pour into this game we call football, for many it's just business. And when greed takes over, success rarely follows. Naval entered 2010-11 with half of their best players sold off for peanuts. Unsurprisingly, they struggled to compete. A disastrous run of 14 games without a win made survival almost impossible from the get-go. And despite a few bright moments like a victory over Benfica, Naval eventually collapsed, finishing dead last. In my eyes, this was the death of Naval and the real end of their story. But as it turns out, Naval's real downfall was just getting started. Relegation to the second tier was only the beginning. The following season, 2011-12, Naval had a squad full of unpaid players, and at one point, they even refused to train. Despite everything, they somehow finished 4th, but behind the scenes, things were crumbling fast. By 2012-13, the financial situation was a full-blown disaster. Players weren't getting paid, and some were even pressured to terminate their contracts to make room for new affordable signings. When they refused, they were banned from training and forced to train separately like fucking outcasts. The club denied any wrongdoing, of course, but by April 2013, unpaid wages led to another players' strike. And then the hammer came down. FIFA punished Naval for unpaid transfer fees dating back to 2007 and docked them 12 points in the process. The Portuguese league added another 5-point deduction for the salary chaos, and yet, even after all of that, Naval still managed to avoid relegation, but only on paper. Because in reality they were broke. They had no money, no future whatsoever. So instead of trying to stay afloat, they voluntarily dropped to the 3rd tier. By 2017, things had gone from bad to humiliating. In the Campeonato Portugal, Naval continued broke, and they won just one single game all season. And that was it. That was the end. After 124 years, Naval ceased operations. But football doesn't just die. 1 month before the club's official demise, a new team was born, Associação Naval 1893. Same colors, same city, but a different reality. Instead of fighting the Primeira Liga, they were now stuck in the 5th tier. And that's where they've been ever since. Because you see, there's simply not enough support for Naval. They're not one of those teams like Vitória de Setúbal or Belenenses where their fanbase will do literally anything to help the club. In reality, most people in Figueira da Foz don't care that much about football. There was never that raw support for Naval, so when the money dried up and the club stopped playing with the big boys, the city stopped caring. That's really it, but their story by itself wasn't the reason that compelled me to make this video. I've said multiple times that I started watching football in 2005. When I began watching, since my family didn't care about the sport at all, my perspective was a blank canvas. To me, there was no difference between Naval, Rio Ave, Vitória de Guimarães or Gil Vicente other than their colors and their position in the table. So, the teams that I got to watch on TV, the players I could collect as cards and stickers became what Portuguese football meant for me. Sure, as time passed, I became aware of who the true historic Portuguese teams were, but 20 years later, I can still recall by heart every club from the 2005-06 season, players from every team, and several key moments from that season because, simply put, nothing hit you the same way as the first time. But that was my experience, and some of you for sure. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't even have clicked on this video. But the fact of the matter is, those moments turned into memories will eventually die. Naval's history, which was burned in that massive fire, had to be as relevant to some people as their 6-year run in the top flight was for me. But the fire and the death of those who watched them play erased those memories. Me, just like you watching this video and remembering Naval in the top flight, will die. And with our demise, our memories will also fade away, permanently erasing the legacy of something that most people give absolutely no fucks about. I know this sounds quite dark, and before you ask me in the comments if everything's alright, well, everything's alright as alright can be. I'm just playing my part and helping their legacy last just a little bit longer, and just for fun, and just for the sake of it, I also try to shed some light on absolutely unknown players that pop up in my mind every once in a while, like Lito, Davorda, Wilson Jr. or Saulo, and I advise you to do the same. People read the comments all the time, so if you know anything about Naval that I didn't mention, feel free to post it in the comment section, even if it's something as small as going to watch a match where your team of choice beat Naval, or a fucking sticker that you just couldn't find. I love hearing those stories, so let them out, don't let them fade away. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the comments.